gets a nurse. That's amazing. That's paid also. That's all paid. My home birth are all covered. Everything is covered. There's nothing from your pocket more than hospital or a normal birth. And so you have this woman that comes to your house as soon as you give birth. And if you have a home birth, she's here for the birth, during the birth, to help the midwife, because you only have one midwife in the Netherlands that attends home birth, and then the Kramzor comes and helps her, assists her with cleaning and help. And then when the baby is born, she helps you at home, basically care for the baby. If it's your first baby, she teaches you how to change nappies, bath him, everything.
Awesome.
And she's also helping you with cooking. She cooks for you, she cleans for you, she can take care of all the kids for you. She can run some small errands for you. She's like
amazing.
the angel.
Yeah.
Angel
like a fairy
coming.
godmother.
So then you have that for like a week to 10 days, depending if you had a C-section or like circumstances.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the system in the Netherlands, which is pretty amazing. And like I was part of a big group of expat mom when I was there that we all gave birth more or less at the same time. And even expats end up giving birth at home, which, Americans and people that are very mainstream and don't think that they would ever give home birth, like if they were in Australia, never they would think about it, or even in the US, because the society is like that. But in Holland, it's so common to give birth at home. I mean, I had my downstairs neighbor, she gave birth at home twice, and it's like they're also quite mainstream people. Like it's just really common, and everybody has a midwife unless you are high risk, then you're followed by a gynecologist, OBGYN, obstetrician. Yeah. But otherwise, it's a midwife that takes care of you all pregnancy. And if you want a home hospital birth, for example, if you're on an epidural, you need to give birth between 9 and 5 weekdays, because otherwise the guy's not going to be there. So it's pretty much like it's actually harder if you want a very medicalized birth than if you don't. It's funny. It's a completely different.
So different.
Yeah.
Because here it's so much easier to have a medicalized birth because we have to fit into their system.
Yeah.
It's not easy not to.
Yeah. It's harder not to.
Yeah, you have to fight actually for a natural birth here than over there you have to fight for a medicalized birth, which is different. Very different. But then they don't have baby dying more, or there's no they have a healthy baby, and it shows. It's just it's not more dangerous, or the things the preconceived ideas that people can have in Australia or in other countries as well. I mean, even my family in France, it's not common to have home birth either. And my family at first was like, "What the hell is she? She's gone. She's gone." And now they understand it much better. And now I'm planning for having our second baby next year, and I'm planning home birth, and hopefully this time.
Australia.
And I'm sure that this time I'm not gonna. If there was a time where I could, be tempted to go to the hospital, I'm sure that that's not going to happen for no reason. I mean, just for sleep, between brackets, just for sleep. But that's not going to happen, because I also knew, I think, in Holland, the medical system, I knew that the hospital wouldn't be as bad as other places. So I think it's also why I gave up into going there, because I knew there wouldn't be, vaccine question. There wouldn't be pressure on anything, on any treatments that didn't want to have. So I think that's also was a big factor in me going. But here it's not the same, right?
So how do you feel the birth here will be different to your birth in the Netherlands in terms of the culture and the views and stuff around?
Well, I learned a lot since coming here about the process here compared to the process in the Netherlands, and so as soon as I learned I was pregnant, I managed to find a very good home birth midwife, and she only does home birth, and she's great. And I know many people that had Bridget actually was the same midwife that Bridget had, and so I'm trying to find the right team. This time I don't want photograph. I just want it to be just me, Toby, and the midwife when she comes, and that's it. I wanted something a bit more just us,
Bit
because
more simple.
yeah, I felt maybe when I look back into my birth, maybe one thing also that slowed down thing was maybe there was too many people around, and I felt like I wish I wasn't, but I'm quite private on those. And I think because I wish I wasn't, I just organized it like if I wasn't. But actually, I felt like I wanted to be, like a bit an animal in my little corner and by myself, right? And I think that I didn't have that, and I think that may have slowed down the process. If I can think of something that I have done, I could do differently. So this time, I think I want just to be, other place and also we have a garden this time, so I can go out. We were in an apartment; I couldn't really go out, so I want to be able to go out So I think the team is important. So if it was my first birth, I would take again a doula, but I don't feel like I want an extra person.
Yep.
And hopefully avoid doctors and and hospital as much as I can. That's all. This is my. I really hope that's gonna happen that way this time.
Yeah, sounds like keeping it simple is gonna be really helpful for you. So do we want to talk a little bit about I missed the part where we talk about what home birth is, but I'm assuming it's pretty straightforward. So home birth is just giving birth at home, but in Australia there's obviously different ways to do this as well. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? I know, Bridget, you know a bit about it.
Yeah. Sorry. So in Australia there's basically 3 different ways that you can do home birth now. So there's a public hospital home birth, which means that there's 2 hospitals in Australia, in Melbourne at the moment, that offer this, in Sunshine and Casey. Which is basically you have a midwife from the hospital, and they will come to your house for you, and it's covered by Medicare, which is great in terms of the financial side of things. However, there's a lot of rules on that type of home birth, because you have to do all of those tests for diabetes and for strep B. And all of these interventions that happen during pregnancy are required of you in order for you to birth this way. And if you get a false positive, which happens fairly commonly with both of these tests, that means that you're required to go to the hospital. You're also required to see an obstetrician. You're required to have all of the regular ultrasounds, which some people don't want to have. So it is quite limiting in terms of if you're wanting an intervention-free birth.
I'm wondering how many women who apply for that actually get through and have a successful home birth.
I don't know. It's still in its infancy, really. It's been I'm not sure actually how long it's been, but it's still officially in pilot mode. I think they're hoping to roll it out to make it more available in different hospitals. Yep. So I've not actually seen any of the stats, but it would definitely be interesting to see.
Yep.
So the other option for you is to have a home birth with a private midwife, which is what Julie and I are both doing, which is wonderful. It means that you can do whatever you want to do. You have all the freedom in terms of during pregnancy and birth that you might at least think that you don't have in other forms. However, it can be quite expensive. Some of it is covered by Medicare, but if you don't have the money for it, and obviously not every location in Australia has access to private midwives. If you're in a more remote area, or there's not actually that many private midwives anymore, maybe you're in a common area, a populated area, but there's just no one around for you.
Yep.
So that is one problem with it. There's a little bit of unsurety about at the end of next year, perhaps. At the moment, they don't require insurance to cover it. They've got an indemnity, and that legally will be ending in the end of 2019. They might renew it, or they might fix that problem, but potentially at the end of next year, we won't have that option at all.
So what does that mean?
That means your only options to home birth would be to have a public hospital home birth or to free birth. And free birth means that you do not have a medically assisted birth, so you don't have a doctor or a midwife with you. A lot of women choose that. However, it obviously does come with a number of risks, particularly for first-time mothers. It might not be an ideal option.
Yep.
But that's where people are getting pushed towards. Because if you don't have the money and you don't want the intervention, that's your only option.
Yeah, it's becoming a lot more popular now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Insane to get to that. Sorry, I find it insane to get to that. Like, if you want a free birth, fine, but it should be your choice. You shouldn't be pushed to do so because of the system. I found it, pretty sad.
And I guess that's something why we feel that the culture in Netherlands is amazing.
Yeah.
There's so much support around that.
Yeah, it's completely different. You don't pay anything. Our birth cost us the rental of the pool, and I think we paid a little extra because we got those special midwife. But if you go to any midwife, that would have been the same. I would have ended up having a home birth as well. It's just that they would have probably not followed me to the hospital. That's the only if I had to transfer, like I did. That's the only difference. But otherwise it's free. Yeah, and also you don't get any. Talking about the test during pregnancy, you don't get any of this even offered if you're not high risk. Like, I didn't have the diabetes test offered to me, and I put on 30 kilos. I mean, you would think that they would have had some. She never even weighed me. Like, it was never an issue because I was otherwise I was eating healthy. I don't know. It was all the water that I lost that day when my water broke. But anyway, I put on a crazy whooping 30 kilos, and that never worried anyone. I'd never been a question. And I remember I had one of my expat friends coming, she's Asian, so she was more used to, intervention. And she had to beg to get the diabetic
GTT.
Yeah, the diabetes test. That was different way of saying things. So I feel it's funny that over there you have to beg to get it, and here you have to beg to don't get it. Yeah. So it's really different.
Yeah, there's so much fear here, I find.
Yeah. You don't also, one thing I like to mention is that you don't have, because a lot of people don't know that here, and I'm amazed. Like, they all think that vitamin K shot is something very, like, everywhere you have it. But you don't have that in Europe. You don't have vitamin K shot. They tell you to take the drops, which you can refuse, right? But you don't have any shots at birth. No Hep B, no vitamin K. But especially the vitamin K, I find it very surprising that a lot of people don't know that it's not something applied everywhere around the world. And that doesn't exist over there. So
it's so funny how we just think that our culture is normal. In America, when a newborn is born, they wipe goo on their eyes. That's part of it.
Why?
I can't even remember. It's something to do with keeping the eyes sterile or something. Okay. And it just sounds so bizarre to us and disgusting.
It's black, right? Is it black now?
I can't even remember what it is.
It's pretty disgusting, the picture I've seen. Yeah, it's pretty.
But here that never happens. It's not something that we're offered. And so it sounds bizarre. And why would you do that to your child? And that's how people in other countries feel about our culture. Yeah. That what we're doing is wrong.
Yeah, it's so interesting how your perspective of normal changes depending on where you're living as well. Yeah. And how much the fear around that, alters things. So... Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I just wanted to also add that in terms of the late-term birthing.
Oh, yes.
So in Australia, if you want to... Well, wait a minute. I've written the stats down here. Where are they? So that there's almost zero late-term births in our hospitals. I believe it's less than 1%. However, here it is. It's 0.6% are born at 42 weeks or beyond in Australia, which sounds bizarre when you think that 8.5% of babies are born at before 37 weeks. We know that it's more high risk for children to be born preterm. They're more likely to need to go into NICU. They're more likely to have poor AGPA scores when they're born. Whereas if a late-term birth, it's almost identical to, it's like very, very small percentages higher risk than at term. However, like as soon as you reach 41 weeks, sometimes even at 40 weeks, they're already telling you we're going to have to schedule you to be